Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started here in just about 6 minutes, but just so you know, we do not have a full contingency of commissioners this evening. We have two who are away from the county and are not able to attend. When that happens for a zoning request, the applicants have the right to ask for their applications to be tabled until such time as all 5 commissioners are available. So that's exactly what's happened this evening. Both of our cases have asked that their applications be tabled until the April 17th meeting because we have 2 commissioners who are out of town and are unavailable. So if you are here to speak on either of those cases will be tabled this evening and not heard. So please rejoin us April the 17th for those 2 cases.
So all we're doing is fireworks.
Yeah.
Fireworks and land bank.
Fireworks and land bank.
Oh, Jesus, be a shield.
I wasn't going to make the You're right. Better.
Yes, ma'am, April 17th. Yes.
Newton, did you hear that?
I did that for Clayton.
He's down his course.
And that is their right. When did they must have made that decision just before the meeting.
They did. They made it just about 2 minutes ago, Newton.
Okay, I heard Brian come up and talk to you.
And Eva met with the applicant for the, 585. That's correct.
We put, Steve, just so you'll know, we put that provision in years ago for this very purpose, saying that it was fair to allow an applicant to have a full board.
That's actually a really good rule. There's actually 4 on the agenda for this evening. There is the 2 applications, and then consideration of the fireworks, and then the discussion around the Land Bank Authority. That's correct. That applicant pulled the application.
So y'all are not gonna talk about the land bank either?
Yes,
No,
we
we are
are.
talking-
We're going
we're
to talk
talking,
about
yeah.
fireworks and land bank. Those are the 2 items that will remain on the agenda this evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, are we gonna call them? Okay. We got a minute.
Here we go. Good evening and welcome to the Spalding County Board of Commissioners zoning public hearing. It is Thursday, March 23rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. We'd request that you please silence your cell phones and all other electronic devices. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Dutton to lead us in the invocation, and I will lead us in the pledge to the flag. Commissioner Dutton.
Please join us in the invocation tonight. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to come out as public servants tonight and as citizens of Spalding County. Father, please bless us with thy spirit and the knowledge of what thou would have us do. Father, please help us to make the right choices here with these 2 issues laid before us. Please be with those commissioners that couldn't make it tonight, that they will be safely guided back to Spalding County, and that they will be put in a position so they can join us next time. Father, we ask these blessings humbly in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number D, public hearings. I have to read that whole.
There's no one signed up for either the fireworks or the Land Bank Authority discussion this evening, Mr. Chairman, so I would ask that we forego the public hearing session.
Okay. And application for 22-11Z, 585 Spalding Investment LLC, owners at 35 South McDonough Road, approximately 20899 acres located in land lot 14 of the 3rd Land District. The applicant has requested rezoning from AR1 to agricultural and residential to C2 manufacturing to allow for the building and operation of a warehouse. The applicant has requested that we table this motion, so therefore we will not do anything other than that.
Do we still have to vote to table?
All right, do I have a motion to table?
Motion to table.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 3-0. Application number 2, 23.03 Sierra Minerva Spring Lake LLP, owner at 2336 Teeman Road, approximately 99.214 acres located in land lot 231 and 232 in the 3rd Land District. The applicant is requesting a special exemption to allow cluster dwellings, family single detached houses with open space with a traditional design within the R2 single-family residential district. I understand that the applicant has requested that we table this action also.
Motion to table.
All right.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion is tabled. Thank you. There is no new business. Other business. Item number 1, consider approval of one half of the cost of the fireworks schedule for the July 4th celebration with the city of Griffin. Dr. Ledbetter.
So this is an annual request and an annual opportunity for us to partner with our city partners in celebration of the 4th of July. The request this year is for half, as it is every year, and that total, if you'll forgive me, I took it out.
$30,000.
It was a total of $30,000, and our request was approximately $15,000 for the fireworks display.
Oh, 30 was the total, not
30 was
Starlight?
the total.
Motion approved.
I will make a second, but I don't like it.
We share,
Okay.
we share with them.
Okay, discussion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I still say that Rock Springs Church and First Assembly of Griffin do the best fireworks in the community in terms of gathering people. I don't think that we should be trying to compete with them. I think we should be partnering with them. And that should be $15,000 that we should be using to either help get traffic or whatever it is. But I think that we don't do enough. We can't possibly measure up to them. That's the only reason why.
Can we look into partnering with them next year? Are they amenable to?
This
I-
year or next year?
I will take that on as an opportunity to work with both of them to understand how we can partner with them.
All right, so we're talking about next
One
year.
big one instead of,
So we're talking about July 4th this year.
yeah, this is for this year.
$15,000 July 4th this year, and the county manager to work to do it differently next year.
Did we budget for this?
We did.
Okay.
And they're still gonna launch it off behind, Southern Crescent? Is that- yeah.
That's my understanding, yes. At Volunteer Park.
Well, it's gonna be easier to see the fireworks this year.
No trees.
Is that dark humor? Is it too soon? Sorry.
All right,
No, it's- I think
any
it's
more
appropriate.
discussion on this? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. 3-0, motion carries, thank you. Item number 2, conduct a discussion regarding the direction the board would like to take with regard to the Griffin Spalding Land Bank Authority. Dr. Ledbetter.
So for the lease agreement, I would refer to our county attorney. But it's my understanding from the conversation that I had with City Manager Jessica O'Connor, the city has approved and adopted the lease agreement from their side. They're asking for us to adopt it from our side. This would be for the creation of the executive director position and that employee or employees that it would require in order to manage all of the properties that are currently under inventory for the Land Bank Authority.
Is this gonna work like the airport authority, like where it's a joint employee, but it's up to them to hire and fire and their HR and stuff?
That's correct.
If you look at the lease agreement for personnel services, this person would be an employee of the city of Griffin. The city of Griffin would hire and fire. The authority would not have much to do in the way of hiring and firing or disciplinary action or anything of that nature.
So the problem with this is that every other board that I know in this community has something to do with hiring the executive director. And how we can decide that the city can take the entire responsibility for hiring and firing the executive director of the Development Authority, yet the board will make policies, but as a city employee, you do what the city tells you to do. Now, this for me, and I don't know if you remember it, Stephanie, was a huge problem when we tried to establish the Land Bank Authority, and that was one of the reasons why we did not want to have commissioners on the Land Bank Authority board. And that was, the other reason was because we had had a transportation planner who worked out of the city, and most of the work that was being done for the transportation planner was for the city. So how do we get beyond that? How do we make this fair? How do we take this board that the state has said is a legal and operating board and turn the running of it over to the city? How do we do that? And what you suggested does not sound like the answer to me. Because the people who serve on the board should have, I mean, at the Development Authority, who picks David? Is that somebody else?
The Development Authority Board hires and fires its executive director, and they are also responsible for his evaluation and
Right.
pay and benefits and all of that.
So we're taking all of this responsibility from the board rather than being able to have someone to guide the board to do board things. We're just having them there because basically the person is going to do what the city tells them to do. I'm with you guys. I know we need an executive director. I'm just not sure that the amount of power that we are taking away from the board is appropriate.
I think Mr. Galloway has some insight that he wants to share.
Is he on?
Stephanie, Jessica was supposed to have made an amendment that hiring and firing would be done in consultation with the Land Bank Authority Board.
That's not included in the lease agreement that I have.
Okay. It is supposed to be there.
Okay.
And
I think it's important for us to know, so that we know that we're all being in the
Yep.
same cup of soup.
well, you said something last time too. Here, I'll get closer to the microphone. You said
thank you.
something last time too about who signs your paycheck is going to sort of direct where you're looking as well. And so if you're a city employee, even if it's just on paper, like you're gonna think from a city's point of view, as opposed to if you were, our employee, you're gonna think from a county's point of view. But if you were the land bank's employee, you're gonna think from a land bank point of view. David Lucky doesn't think, well, the city needs this, the county needs this. He goes, the land bank, the development authority needs this. And so
And that's the way every board, I think, should operate.
Yeah.
And how we get there, I think, is important, because if it's a board that we want to have the same, clearly we wanted to have longevity, we've been investing in it all this time. I feel like,
I don't know if we're quite there yet.
I think,
let me say the words without getting myself in trouble.
Careful now, careful now.
I don't want to create another situation where we are figuring out whether or not the city is doing more or getting more, or they're trying to figure out if we're doing more and getting more. And my example of this is that there's a housing board for the housing authority. Every development that the housing authority has built in the last 15 or 20 years has been within the city limits. We have multiple areas in the county, Dundee, East Griffin, West Griffin, where the population is dense, has the same needs, and they're in the county, but because there has been nobody from the county on those boards to say,
Hey, what about us?
bring that tax revenue here. So, not to say that anybody did anything intentional, but because we weren't at the table in a real way, I consider it an oversight of us. So I would like to figure out, first of all, how the board can be involved in choosing who it is that's going to lead them. And secondly, how it is that a city employee, and I'm gonna use you as an example, Steve. When we had our emergency and Steve was sick, Steve asked Water Authority, Joseph, to babysit us. Okay, good. He was probably the most qualified person, but technically he was a Water Authority person. But because he was hired as a lease by the county, Steve is actually authorized to give him other stuff to do. I don't want that to happen with the Land Bank Authority. And I mean, I get it. It was an emergency, and I think as a Water Authority, we said, hey, we get it. But that's the kind of thing I feel like we need to figure out on the front end.
I never
how-
thought about that angle.
How
Yeah.
that works, because if we want them doing Land Bank Authority stuff, whatever you do, the focus should be on making the land bank better, making it solvent, putting properties back on the tax rolls, bringing investment in, pulling properties together for somebody. So I don't think it's just as easy as saying that the city will do the hiring and the firing. And then on the other hand, I would like to know if Virginia was doing XYZ by herself, and I forget who the other person was before Virginia.
John Joyner.
Yeah,
John
right.
Joyner.
How come they didn't get whoever it was that they needed, if they needed an administrative assistant? I'm not saying they don't need them now, but somebody needs to define how they know what it is they need and how many of those things that they need.
I think if anything, the experience with the prior two executive directors of the land bank has taught that authority that they absolutely need a full-time executive director. That is not a part-time executive director job. And the amended and restated interlocal cooperation agreement that amendment says that this will be a full-time employee, and that is absolutely a requirement.
I mean, I think we are all in agreement with
Yes,
that.
yes, we are.
But clearly, if
There needed to be two John Joyners and two Virginia churches. Not only did they probably need an administrative assistant, they needed a clone, because.
And that's what I'm saying. If our expectation is that your plan is over the next 1 year, I'll create all the ordinances or all the blah, 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 or I will have 100 houses off the list removed, then that's something that they can work with. But clearly, if you're the person going out doing all the looking, you shouldn't be the person typing. You shouldn't be the person answering the phone. You shouldn't be the person sending messages back. So we know they need more people, but how do you, the paper says as many people as you,
Want.
that doesn't give us a number, because
Yeah.
we're gonna share the cost of this. So I think we need to say, okay, you start out with, full-time office assistant and 20-hour a week, or you start out with just this and this, and then you can come back and say to us, we really need another body, or we need I'm gonna say engineer, because I don't, just out of the blue, but we need that in order for us to do this. And then it's easier for us to say, okay, yeah, but just saying you can hire,
Well, it also depends on, like, not to put the previous two down, but it depends on the skill level. If I tried to go and do closings on property, like, it would take hours. I don't know how to do that. Like, I've never done that. I didn't close on my own house. I just didn't, like, but somebody knows what they're doing. It's like zip zam, and they just move through it. So, at the same time, if my mom went to court, with my clients, like, she wouldn't know what she's doing because she doesn't do that
do
kind
that,
of law.
right?
So, I think that this isn't, it could be a full-time, 40-hour-a-week job for somebody who has to sort of find their way into it. Whereas if we find someone that has done this in a bigger county, that knows what they're doing, that has, you know what I mean, like, that is like, oh yeah, 400 houses, yeah, we can do that in a week. Like, and they're that level of skill, like, it might not need 6 people. You know what I'm saying? It might, who knows? But because I don't do that kind of law. But at the same time, I think perhaps we need to put a more fine point on that. Hey, there are different parts of the job. You know what I mean? Like, I have an assistant who does the filings, but I have a paralegal who does the briefs. You know what I mean? Like, and so we have a system that takes 3 people. But if, like, I don't have an investigator that works for me. So if it's the same kind of system and you need a paralegal and an assistant and then the lawyer, but then you also need an investigator that goes to each site and, or an inspector or something, or an engineer, like, instead of just saying, hey, figure it out, well, you need however many you need, maybe we codify that and say, like, well, you're gonna have somebody at the office taking paperwork and answering the phones. You're gonna have a lawyer that is responsible for this. You're gonna have a site inspector that's responsible for this, or, like, work with city and county code inspection. You know what I'm saying? Like, that we need to, like, quantify these things as opposed to just like, hey, figure it out.
So the
We'll pay the
question
cost.
for me then would be, because Stephanie has done a ton of these things, and both of the directors that we have, both have been attorneys. But clearly, doing closings is a whole nother realm from just doing the paperwork that you have to do with this. So if we have to pay an attorney, that means that we need to pay more into
Or
what it
maybe
is that we need
maybe we
to
have
fund
an
them with.
executive director that isn't an attorney, but then they subs out the attorney work to
Well,
a firm
that's
that,
what I'm
you know what I
saying.
mean? Like,
I don't think the expectation should be that we want the executive director to be doing the closing.
all of everything.
See, I don't know, because I know that I would expect you to be able to tell us some things about what you think
Well,
they should be able to do.
Ms. Church was not a real property lawyer, and we being Becko and Murray, did the bulk of the closings for the land bank and have for years. We didn't do them all because whoever is paying the closing costs is able to choose the closing attorney, but our land bank rates are probably the most reasonable of anyone else's in town, and we have ended up doing the majority of those closings over the years.
But did they pay you or did we pay you?
No, the land bank paid us,
So,
but the
but-
land bank paid us out of its funds, which are contributed by the county and the city, and based on any property sales.
So I'm just gonna say the $37,000 that we were giving to the land bank, and maybe the city was doing the same, would clearly, more than half of it would be salaries. So
oh, yeah,
there's
almost
not
all
much
of it.
left for cutting grass and properties and looking for titles and,
Right.
so I'm saying all this to say, we need to also look at how well we fund them. Can they do what they need to do with that $37,000 each? Don't say that you can't do the work because y'all don't have enough money. Ask us for the money
Yeah.
in order for you to do the work.
If we're reconstituting this and we're like, we want you to do this and this and this and this, then come back and say, okay, this is gonna cost this.
Right,
Don't,
make it real.
if we're moving you from here to here, then give us a number, but at the same time, don't let us, empower you to do this and then not be able to come through because you don't have the manpower or whatever. So if right now it's like, we're gonna hire who we need, like, I think we need that quantified. But
I mean,
First
this,
step.
this agreement is, the personnel lease agreement, it's not terrible. I mean, it is what it is because they will be a city employee and the city, is responsible for hiring, firing, disciplinary action. It does give the board the right to make requests of the city, subject to the City of Griffin's personnel policies.
Does it have that
Not-
language that Newton said, like in
It-
conjunction with the board?
No, it's not in conjunction. It's the right to request disciplinary action to include termination, but that right to request has to be based on City of Griffin personnel policies, and the City of Griffin makes the final determination.
Yeah, I'm still not right, okay.
First,
Newton, was that your understanding of what should come before us tonight?
Commissioner, Jessica sent the draft to me for review. This has not yet gone to the Land Bank Board. I expressed to Jessica concern that we as an authority would have responsibility for carrying out the duties of the Land Bank, but through someone over whom we had no employer control. She and I worked out language that was supposed to be in the document that you are seeing and was supposed to be in the document she was going to present to the city that night that said the city would not take action except in consultation with the Land Bank Authority on hiring and firing and discipline. She was fine with that, I was fine with that, and Stephanie, I made the assumption that the city had approved that and that that's what was being presented tonight with that revision.
Well, this is the actual language, Newton. Lessee shall have the right to request discipline, including termination of a leased employee, subject to the personnel policies of the City of Griffin, subject to final determination of action, if any, by the city manager.
Well, then it would be subject to their personnel policy because it would be the person would technically be an employee of the city, which has been consistent with the proposals that have been presented since last summer.
I would agree with that. I think this language is not nearly as tight as I would
Yep.
personally prefer it to be, for the land bank.
Yep.
I mean, the airport authority has a very similar, agreement with the City of Griffin, and the airport director is an employee of the City of Griffin, subject to their personnel policies as well. And
But they have just one task that, like,
true,
You know,
but frankly,
primary.
come evaluation time, it becomes an issue because the city,
work for
the
the-
city may think differently than the authority as to the work that's being performed.
but it's also like one specific task. I mean, imagine if the land bank was like, our job is to get, this specific property changed from this to this. Like, that's a lot easier to sort of agree on, are you getting closer to that or not? Whereas this is some in the city, some in the county, like,
There are two components to getting a property, or three components to getting a property acquired, sold, and closed. The executive director would be responsible for acquiring properties as a tax sale if and when we have cleared out the backlog of the properties that we have in the contracts. The executive director would be responsible for bringing those properties to the land bank for review and approval. When it goes to closing, that moves over to Stephanie, and I would like to compliment Beck Owen on bringing on David Penland to do this work. And we have been able to move properties. We have approximately 25 in queue, I believe, Stephanie, in which the right of redemption has been foreclosed.
That's correct.
Where we have pending contracts and we are simply awaiting the closing. Before I left on Tuesday, I signed 2 deeds that for closings that are supposed to occur tomorrow, I believe, Stephanie, along with Patty Becker. Last month, we closed 4 or 5 properties and actually generated revenues of about $13,500. But those of us who are volunteers on the board cannot do that work.
Yeah.
And we have run into a circumstance where, and here is one point where I will be critical of the way the city has handled one component of this, though overall I think they've been cooperative. Chad Jacobs and Michelle at the city have been instructed to do no more land bank work. So, the identification of the properties ready for closing have been tied to work the land bank did, and to her credit, the bulk of that was done by Sharon King. And then turning them over to Beck Owen to be closed. And that has been done entirely with volunteer work, and it is not sustainable unless we have a full board and we have a full-time executive doing it.
And it's not sustainable without funding, because
Yeah.
these contracts are for a pittance, most of them. So this is a lot of closings to generate close to $14,000. Some,
That's right.
and some have been redemptions, actually, because the prior owners have redeemed the property. And I am extremely happy to have David aboard, and he has done yeoman's work in getting these things moved, and it's been such a pleasure to watch these files, instead of stacking up in my office, actually going out of the door.
We're moving them through, and we're getting them to close. And whereas the contracts had lagged when y'all, and Stephanie, as I understand it, most of the people who had contracts that had age on them, I mean, we had some contracts that were about old enough to draw Social Security. When the people who had those contracts have been contacted and asked whether they want to proceed, the answer has been generally yes. And I'm not aware of anyone who has decided not to proceed.
Nor am I.
So the only problem,
I would estimate, Stephanie, we've had the better part of 10 closings over the past 45 days, with 2 more coming up tomorrow, and I know that David has the remainder of them, or a number of them ready to get closed. All he's got to do is a final title.
And we were in the position where the work would be given to us to do, we would run the title, and then we wouldn't get a contract, we wouldn't hear anything else about it, and so a year later, we have to run the title. I mean, we have to update the title again if it ever comes back up on our radar. So, it really is not something that volunteers can run. There has to be a day-to-day person, and it really does need to be a day-to-day person and a full-time.
I'm with you.
That person does not have to be a lawyer.
No, they don't.
And I might point out, James, for you and Gwen, we are, the legal fees per month in order to move these through, now that we're finally being able to get to the point that they're being moved through, are running about $8,000 to $10,000 a month because of the numbers of properties. And we've got to move those to closing so that we get money coming in to help pay those. But as I have always told you, these properties are valued so low that we are not ever, in my opinion, going to see a self-sustained land bank from just the financial recovery of the sale of property.
And in my opinion, the best functioning land banks in our state have money coming in from outside sources,
they're
from
developing,
yes,
leasing.
That's correct.
and people leaving money, honestly,
Yeah, or they
in
have a
Macon
foundation,
Bibb, there's
like
a
Macon, yeah,
foundation.
yeah.
And they, in Macon Bibb, for example, they don't buy properties at a tax sale. They certainly don't just take whatever's left. Most of theirs come through a either donation or a judicial foreclosure by the tax commissioner. The judicial foreclosure takes care of all the title problems up front, whereas the properties that we have are, many of them are the worst of the worst when it comes to titles. David can tell you, I mean, he could get his private investigator's license now because of all the heirs that he has been tracking down all over the country.
Fulton does it by judicial as well. Why don't we do it that way?
It's expensive.
It's expensive, it's
Is
very
it
expensive.
$120,000 a year? Because that's how much we're currently spending on hunting all these titles and stuff down, it sounds like. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
But I think we
Yeah.
just need a
It
lot
would be
more
more than that.
conversation about this before we sign anything. You
especially
know,
if
we
it's
haven't
not
even
totally
talked about the accountability issue. Who will hold the board, not the board, but who will hold, well, the board, the director accountable? We're talking about these properties that they're turning over now. We still got properties out there that we don't know that people actually did with them what they, I know of one in particular where it's a rental property now and it was supposed to be a museum. So, but nobody went back to check. So that is the other thing that is not being addressed in this.
Well, Newton can chime in on this as well, but here's another thing. We can put conditions in deeds and expect people to do what they say that they're going to do. We can put these conditions in contracts, and Virginia and I worked a long time on revamping the land bank's contract. But actually following through and making sure that that everyone does the right thing, that everyone does what they're supposed to, and follows these covenants that we include in the deeds, and then taking the action to take the property back, that's another huge expense that the land bank doesn't have the money to do.
But it needs to deal with that because it's a very real problem for, we don't even know what percentage of properties have been done that way. So all of that,
We have an estimate, Graham. We expect that about of the 120 or so properties that have been transferred with deed restrictions that they could not be rental properties, we estimate that probably a third of the current owners are in violation of those covenants. And we have actually had a case go up on appeal where a lady purchased a piece of property on Meriwether Street, did not do any work as she was required to do on that property. We attempted to take that property back, and she was able to get the Court of Appeals, after a successful decision in Superior Court, to take that on appeal. David's had that up on appeal since at least early fall of last year, waiting to see whether or not the Court of Appeals would take it.
Yeah, Clayton Kendrick was handling it for our office before, David.
well, it's like when we were doing the NREM. People would come in here and say they're gonna fix their house, and we gave them 3 months, and in 3 months or whatever, code enforcement went out there and
Nothing.
they
Nothing
didn't
had
do it,
been
so they
done.
were back here. So I'm just saying, these are the kinds of policies that the board needs to be able to help institute. I just wanna make sure that we are equally represented on the board, and that the people who are working are not working for the city, they are working for the Land Bank Authority. The sheriff's department's people work for the sheriff, even though they're county employees. They work under our personnel policy, but the sheriff can say, bye-bye, go home any day without having to do anything. So why
The
can't?
chief appraiser works for the Board of Tax Assessors.
that's what I'm saying,
The
why
election
can't we-
supervisor works for the Board of Elections.
So I think we just need to table this. I would like to make a motion to table.
Before you do that, what I had wanted to see before it actually went before the city commission or came to you was that there would be some sort of workshop wherein your boards and the board of the authority actually had some discussion so that you
Right.
could have some sort of meeting of the minds. That,
That's a great idea.
that is what I thought was going to happen, so I hope that that can still happen.
So my motion is to table this until after we have had a discussion with the Land Bank Authority Board and the City of Griffin, Board of Commissioners.
But Glenn, can I ask that you put a date certain on that, because time is of the essence of this?
Anybody just pick a date, I'm good with it.
Okay.
What do you think?
It's gonna have to be a month out. At least. It's gonna have to be a month out for
Okay,
to get the
because we got
boards.
stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, just to try to get the board state to be able to do that.
So, well, let's just see about getting a date set up within the next 30 days.
Yes.
I mean, if we don't get to do it, we can at least make sure it's planned.
Is that acceptable, Newton?
It's as good as we can get. I would just point out that we are over a year past Virginia's departure, and we are roughly reaching the year anniversary of when the consultant was brought on. And about 8 months past the date the consultant report was completed. We've got to get somebody in this position, because those of us who are volunteers and want to see the thing work have to have somebody in that capacity to get these properties moved.
What's the date of the next land bank meeting?
Second Thursday in April, which I believe
It's
is
the 13th.
13th.
Um,
No, is it the 13th?
yes, yes.
Land Bank.
Okay,
what time?
let's.
It's
let's,
the 13th at 4 o'clock.
Let's, see, when this thing started, we started off saying we were going to redo the whole thing, if you remember. And then we got to the point where we said, let's just get an full-time executive director on board, and then we will flush out the rest of this to be able to do. We're gonna bite the elephant one bite at a time.
To redo the whole thing would require us to be under a different Georgia code section, the 2012 Act, so,
Yeah, we want to keep it under the last one so
Right.
we can finish off what we've got. Once we've
That's correct.
caught up, we're going to reconstitute it under whatever.
So let's just take it one step at a time. Let's, by
I agree.
by the 14th, let's, 1 month from today, let's hopefully set up a date for us to be able to talk with the Land Bank and the City of Griffin to work this out on exactly how many steps we want to take this in to be. Okay, we agree with that?
That's my motion.
All right, I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor signify by raising your hand, 3-0. Thank you. Item G, executive session, we have none tonight. I want to remind the commissioners that we have a retreat starting at 9 o'clock tomorrow.
It starts at 8. Well, you got it starting at 9? Okay, sorry.
Excuse me.
Correct.
Okay, 9 o'clock tomorrow. We're located in Fayetteville City Hall at 210 Stonewall Avenue, West, Fayetteville, Georgia. We're wearing blue. All right,
Oh, we want to do those polos? Blue polos?
yes, blue polo tomorrow. All right,
Well, there's one more thing I wanted to bring up. Today, Attorney General Carr came to town, and they had a roundtable discussion with all sorts of law enforcement from all over the region. I mean, we're talking the FBI, the Attorney Generals, the federal district attorneys came in, like every sheriff department, DA's offices, chiefs of police, really trying to get on the same page with the three parts of gang interdiction, which is like suppression, but also like how do you interdict their recruitment, but then also like give the kids a different avenue. So like it's, almost age groups, but this is a real show that everyone is very serious about this. They chose Spalding, and it's taken about a week to get it organized, but they did it in response to the tragic events that happened last week with that poor girl and her family that now are without her. And it was amazing to see the show of support from, Director of Public Safety was there, Gypstick was there, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Community Supervision, if it had in any way could touch this before, I mean, there were nonprofits there that like get inner city kids books to read. It's like, how do we all combat this at the same time? And I left with some really, really, really positive feelings about what's coming down the pike and for the citizens, and hopefully for the communities that are struck by the terror that is the gang violence. So
Thanks for saying that. Did not,
I didn't know it.
really, really cool stuff was
Think it
talked
was
about, so.
recorded?
No, they were talking about some of the specific strategies and like,
But the session that they did wasn't recorded, that we could
No.
maybe go back and look at it?
no, because they didn't want the cards that they could play to be shown.
Put out on the table, okay, gotcha.
But like, I sat and listened and went, this is gonna be great for Griffin and Spalding.
I'm excited
Like,
about
this is
that.
really, and like all these other groups. And then, of course, we can then help others in their stuff, and, you know, it's amazing. We think, we're a small town and we're having this problem. There were the chief of police in Warm Springs said there were 2 gang-related murders last month in Warm Springs. Warm Springs is the size of this room. You know what I mean? And like, you just go, man, like, even Warm Springs has got gang-related problem.
Man.
So, yeah, it's getting bad, but I mean, it was amazing to have the FBI task force head, you know, in the same room with everyone else going, hey, I've got a small army of people and we would love to come help. So really, really, really excited about.
well,
Some
please
of
keep
those.
in touch with that
Yeah.
and let us know. All right, anything else for you? All right, anything from you, ma'am? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raise your hand. We're adjourned.
Oh, God, it's 9:00 in the morning.
Oh, wait a minute, hold.
During the fireworks stuff. What is the parade?
Uh,
They're still working out the details.